Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain from Kojima Productions is a behemoth of a game, and not just in the scope of its design or the length of its campaign. 5 serves as the last entry in the Solid series, the final game for Kojima Productions, and the end of an era for Konami Publishing. 5 is the story of Big Boss, the progenitor of the Snake Clan and villain of the original Metal Gear games, who is out for revenge against the perpetrators of the events of Ground Zeroes. The game drops the linear structure of previous entries in favor of an open-world sandbox approach. This change can be jarring to fans of the series as much of the narrative focus is diluted with non-story missions and side activities. Speaking of which, there is a lot to do in the game when you aren't progressing the plot. One of the major parts of the game is growing Mother Base, Big Boss's new headquarters built on an offshore oil platform. This base serves a myriad of purposes, from researching new weapons and gear to providing fire support and intel in the field. In order to do any of that, the player will need a regular supply of money and resources, which is where the side ops come in. Most of these missions won't progress the story, but will provide the necessary goods to build up Mother Base. By the end of the game, the side ops can wear a bit thin, especially given that they take place in locations previously used in other missions, often requiring the player to capture the same enemy outposts over and over again. You'll also need to staff the base, which is where the game's new Fulton system comes in, allowing players to extract any subdued character or, eventually, equipment in the field. There is a surprising amount of management to do at Mother Base as well, with making sure employees are assigned to the correct departments, choosing which departments to advance, and assigning research projects. All of that goes to show there is a lot to do besides enacting vengeance on those who attack the previous Mother Base. The narrative feels light at the beginning, but eventually picks up in the mid-game. The open-world structure doesn't graft perfectly onto the story-focused nature of previous entries, but when it gets going, the narrative can stand shoulder to shoulder with most of the games in the series. The game has a lot of Western influence. The open world and base building of Assassin's Creed, the guard post and open-ended mission design of Far Cry, and the episodic presentation of Alan Wake all make their way into the game. The base building can be a bit obtuse with a myriad of different systems to manage that aren't all perfectly explained. The open world suffers from the fatigue that almost all games utilizing such a structure do, and the episodic presentation feels half-baked and used way too often. While the mechanics are sound, the controls could have used a bit more Western or maybe just modern influences. For some reason, Kojima doesn't believe in toggles, so be prepared to contort your hands into arthritic talons to do things like smoke your cigar. There's also the issue of Quiet, one of the companions Snake can choose to accompany him on missions. Her utility in the game and characterization are great, but that's completely eclipsed by her misogynistic pandering and antiquated design. There's an attempt to justify it through the narrative, but it's half-hearted at best. In a game where hamburgers get nearly a half hour of discussion, the reason why Quiet looks and acts like a Vegas escort girl nets only a few lines and might as well not exist at all. None of its flaws can overshadow the heights reached by the rest of the game, however. Tying balloons to enemies may go down in history as one of the most joyous mechanics in video games. The sheer scope is unrivaled in the rest of the series, and goes toe-to-toe with any in the open-world genre, ensuring there's almost always something to do even after the credits roll. Its story, with its twists and turns, is on par with the rest of the franchise. Metal Gear Solid 5 is a no-brainer for fans of the series, but it's also solid enough mechanically and dense enough in its content offering to recommend to anyone who is simply a fan of games.